Welcome to the Prado Museum. We're here again with our weekly session in English on the museum's social media programming just a few moments before the museum opens to the public. And this is a project that's supported by our nonprofit American Friends of the Prado Museum. We thank you, all of our supporters who help make this and all of our projects possible. And we invite everyone to check us out on our website or that of our sister institution in Spain, the Fundación Amigos. Our main mission is to support the museum, but we offer programs, ways to visit, courses, and other interesting ways to get involved. And the Prado Museum has been referred to many times as a museum of painters rather than a museum of paintings. And this is because the great works of art by these artists seem to come always in plural, whether it's 4 works by this artist or 20 or even 50 sometimes. And so I'd like to invite everyone today to come to this northern rotonda on the ground floor, come past the Raphaels, in plural, come past the Sebastianos del Piombos, and all the way up here to see this artist that we have in this rotunda who is considered the best of the Renaissance in Spain. When the museum opened in 1819, he was the most represented artist in the collection with 15 works of art on view. The Prado has 21 works of this artist. He was copied, used as a model by so many following generations. For example, he was a wonderful portraitist, and he was used as a model as the model to follow for great art. And he was still in great consideration. His work had just been bought when the museum opened by King Charles IV. These works that we're coming to, King Charles IV had bought many panels of this artist, and we are talking about Juan de Juanes. So Juan de Juanes is part of a family saga of painters who works out of Valencia in the 16th century. And Valencia in the 16th century is a vibrant city that was so important to the Kingdom of Aragon. The Kingdom of Aragon had expanded from Eastern Iberian Peninsula to Lower Italy. It was a very mercantile, open exchange city that was open to all of these artistic influences from all around the Mediterranean. And the Prado's collection, even the Valencia, and a few generations earlier, has an Italian artist who came with the Cardinal Borgia, which is Paolo di San Leocadio, which I'd like to remember that the American Friends, thanks to our donors, helped the Prado purchase one of his works. And so it's an Italian painter working in Valencia just 2 generations earlier. Another painter, which is right around the corner here, the beautiful Yáñez de Almedina, which is around the corner, who had studied with Leonardo da Vinci and was working in Valencia. So these influences are here. And the Masip family, Juan de Juanes, his father's name is Vicente Juan Masip. And his name is Juan Masip, and he's true to this Renaissance tradition. He is interested in Latin, he's interested in classical sculpture and classical culture. He knows, he reads, he's frequenting the intellectual circles in Valencia, and so he changes his name either in honor of the classics or to distinguish him from his father and his son, who are also painters, and he changes his name to Juan de Juanes or Juan de Juanes. And his most famous works that we have here at the Prado are a series that come from the Saint Steven parish. It was the altarpiece of the Saint Steven parish in Valencia that was commissioned to him and another artist in the 1560s. And these are the works that were brought to the royal collection by Charles IV, who's the king that we know, who was painted by Goya. Charles IV, right at the end of the 1700s and right at the turn of the 1800s. And first of all, we're talking about high Renaissance here, very much influenced by Raphael, Leonardo's. I'd like to draw attention to this beautiful silk robe of Stephen that Saint Stephen is wearing, because Valencia is also a major producer of silk and refined fabrics, which is represented in these altarpieces. There is this series of altarpieces would have been 3 tiers of 3 paintings each, and it shows both 6 panels of the life of Saint Stephen and 3 panels of the Passion of Christ. So the most important and iconic work of this is this Last Supper of Juan de Juanes, which is so important for the people, for the Catholics in Spain. I'd like to put this into context that so many families have this image for their personal devotion for many generations, and even up until today, that this is an image that would illustrate Bibles in Spain. It would have been used as a memento for First Communions. It had a stamp in the 20th century. So this is a very important Last Supper image for private devotion of the Catholics in Spain. And what we know is that there was an engraving of Leonardo's Last Supper in Valencia. There was also an engraving of a composition by Dürer that probably Juan de Juanes had seen, and he is so much derived from this tradition of what's happening, the Renaissance that happened. Look at this beautiful still lives, the beginning of still lives here on the table. And this is the Eucharistic moment of the Last Supper, when Jesus is saying, "Take this bread and eat it, this is my body." And right after he says that one of you will betray me. And so all of the apostles have the halos in their names, except for Judas Iscariot, who would be his traitor, and his name is below on the stool. So today is just an introduction to invite you to come to this area to see all of these works. The lives of Saint Stephen. Stephen is the first martyr in Christian tradition. His story is written by Luke in the book of the Acts of the Apostles. He was a holy man who was chosen to take care of the widows that were being left aside in Jerusalem, to give them bread. And he was filled with the Holy Spirit. He also performed miracles and healings, and basically created a lot of jealousy, and was accused of blasphemy, and was condemned to be stoned. And here is, for example, is his stoning. And very much parallel to the life of Christ and the Passion of Christ, that when he's dying, he prays for his killers, he prays for God to forgive them, and he prays to go peacefully to heaven. And then he's buried. Look at this over here. If you continue, we have his burial, which is very much following the compositions of Christ's burial. So he's a very parallel to the Passion of Christ, the death of and stoning, the martyrdom of Saint Stephen. And what is interesting in these paintings that we walked by is that there's a spectator in most of them, and that is Saul of Tarsus, who is very circumspectly watching what is happening to the martyrdom of Saint Stephen, because in the next chapter in Acts, he participates in the persecution of the early Christians, but then he is fundamental to this. Here he is here, this is Saul. He's fundamental when he falls on the road to Damascus and converts to Christianity. He will very much be St. Paul, helper to organize the beginning of the Christian church. And so all of this would have been evident to the modern day, to the contemporary viewers who would have seen this, and it's part of their story and belief. And these paintings were very important to the Spanish Royal Collection, important, and have always been part of the Prado Museum since its opening in 1819. And there's so many works of this artist here on view. So please come down to the North Rotunda and have a look at what great talent of Juan de Juanes and his father, and he was the dominant workshop in Valencia in the mid-16th century. Thank you very much for being with us today, and we'll hope you'll join us again next week.